Thanks for the privilege of your time. This is the SALVANT report. What a difference a year makes. Last May 2025, the US president paid a triumphant visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Over the course of a 4-day tour, he admired the Gulf capitals' gleaming marvels, cheered on their ambitious modernization plans, and showcased over $3 trillion in pledged Gulf investment and mega deals between US and Gulf businesses. What a difference a year make. The US-Israeli war with Iran, however, put the same Gulf states in an impossible position. The American forces, the hosts, have become the main reason their hotels and energy infrastructure are under Iranian attack. Although Iranian military assets are badly degraded, Tehran retains the capacity to strike the Gulf, and its grief on the Strait of Hormuz is undiminished. US president is likely to take any deal he can call a victory, as he is to escalate. Either way, the Gulf states lose. Gulf leaders must stop waiting for Washington to deliver an outcome that serves them and start shaping one themselves. This is what the SALVANT report said in one of our shows 2 weeks or a month ago, as it relates to a new order for the Gulf. For weeks now, after the United States and Israel began the attack on Iran on February 28, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates all face barrages of Iranian missiles and drones aimed at military bases, airports, oil refinery, and data centers. On April 8, 2 months ago, a ceasefire stopped most of the fighting. But Iran has effectively blocked, until now, the Strait of Hormuz, halting shipping of Gulf oil, gas, and other commodities. And the thing is still going, what now, with the resurgence of hostilities. The problem Gulf leaders now face is broader than the status of the Strait of Hormuz. The Gulf states do not want a regional order in which a hostile neighbor can dictate how their economies connect to the world. And many are unsettled by how Washington has handled the war and is handling negotiation of a possible peace. There are strategists in every Gulf state arguing now to downgrade or cut ties with the U.S., pointing out that American security commitment failed to deter Iranian attacks and entangled the region in a months-long war. The Gulf countries never required perfect peace in their dangerous neighborhood. Yet, their efforts over the past decade to diversify their economies away from fossil fuels and to lessen political and social constraints do depend on keeping regional disorder in check. For the foreseeable future, that means continuing to look to the United States of America as their primary strategic and security partner because their ties run deep and the Gulf has no good alternatives. Various Gulf countries might, in theory, try to make a separate peace with Iran, punish Iran, band together and turn inward, or find other external partners to replace some of what the U.S. offers. And we talking about that relationship. America and the Gulf still need each other, regardless of what's going on, what now. Even if we find some Gulf strategists arguing to downgrade or cut ties with the U.S. And they are right by pointing out that American security commitment failed to deter Iranian attacks. And now they find themselves not being able to ship their oil and in a month-long war. But we can say and continue to say America and the Gulf still need each other. However, the way out requires abandoning the assumption that has governed Gulf security for a century. They think that the security is a commodity that be brokered rather than a capability to be built. America and the Gulf still need each other. For all Washington's culpability in the current war, the capriciousness of its policy and the damage its actions have done to the regional and global economies, in the wake of the conflict, there will be an opportunity to deepen the U.S. Gulf partnerships. Can they still believe that? Can we in America believe that America and the Gulf still need each other. Even the capriciousness of Washington's policy and the damage he has caused with that stupid war, the war of choice, where America and Israelis are being humiliated by Iran. But the United States may lose this opportunity if it effectively cedes the Strait of Hormuz to Iranian control. Does Washington have the power to do that? And we think, from our own opinion, that this administration has done more damage to U.S. credibility, U.S. superpower, U.S. a policy than Russia and China have done for the past 30 years. The global economic disruption of this war has proved the hollowness of the claim, very hollow, the hollowness of the claim that the Gulf needs Washington, but Washington no longer needs the Gulf. This is bogus. In fact, both sides need the economy and strategic partnership the other offers to help them navigate a competitive, unpredictable world. Where is the leverage then? This war, that stupid war, that war of choice, a war that Benjamin Netanyahu has forced the U.S. to get involved in, find himself in a quagmire. The war has prompted some soul searching in the Gulf. And for that very reason, the U.S. security guarantee and military presence was supposed to backstop the Gulf state development strategies, keeping a lead on regional disorder so that they could pursue domestic transformation. Instead, he attracted Iranian retaliation on Gulf soil. Gulf states' attempts over the past several years to seek detente with Iran failed to prevent Tehran from striking them, because Iran is operating from the standpoint that a military basis, a diplomatic building, is in the international jargon the extension of the country. So if the military basis is on you, the host, it's on your soil, Iran said, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking the country that attacked me. And it's fair game, because there are military bases that they use to attack my country, that they use to attack me. Even though it's inside of your country, it's an extension of their territory. Interesting, isn't it? Multinational firms have not fled. But commercial facilities have been damaged, revenues lost, and business halted, all of which has raised questions about the Gulf's future as a competitive destination for international talent and investment. Factories can be rebuilt and revenues can recover, but confidence is harder to restore. Factories can be rebuilt and revenues can recover, but confidence is harder to restore. Yet, the Gulf states' option to try to restore their security are all underwhelming. In an attempt to reduce the threat from Iran, for instance, some Gulf states might lend their own militaries to the U.S.-Israeli war effort. And that's a huge mistake. Iran is not playing. He has a ballistic missile. And for what we have heard going everywhere around the world, not in the U.S. Television, because it's not telling you exactly, because they cannot tell you the truth as it relates to what's happening at the war right now. But before Khamenei's death, knowing for 47 years that the US and Israelis will attack them, they have divided the country in 31 command centers with their own leadership, their own stock of drones, their own ballistic missiles, and a pre-instruction from Khamenei. So that's the reason why you see a disconnect between the military and the political environment, the political elite. Because these people, the instruction they have received from Khamenei, that they don't have to call Tehran, the capital, they don't have to call anybody in order to receive order from them. They already have their instruction, and they need to stop until and only when they receive instruction, new instruction or orders from the constitutional authority. That's the reason why the US and Israel get in the quagmire. It doesn't matter what the political elite does, the war is still going. Because if you try to decapitate the leadership, there had already 4 layers of people waiting to move up. The war continues. And every single command center, 31 of them, they have their own instruction, their own drone, their own and their own targets. When that happens, you shoot. It doesn't matter anything from anybody, what you heard and what you hear on TV and everything like that. They have something. And what now? There is no constitutional authority or theoretical authority to tell them to stop. Because Khamenei's son is nowhere to be found. We got a lot of things that they're saying, but these people have pre-instruction from Khamenei and they don't have anybody to report to. They don't have to call anybody to have permission to shoot or to send some drone or ballistic missile. It's already pre-established. That's the danger of that quagmire where the US stupidly get into. We know now, based on information gathered everywhere, that this war has prompted some soul searching in the Gulf. What should we do? What we shouldn't do? The mistake that we made is that it was a mistake for us to rely too much on the US security guarantee. Is we going to continue to assume that the Gulf security, it's a commodity to be brokered rather than a capability to be built? The Gulf state might also band together in an attempt to strengthen their collective security, integrate their economies, and use their leverage with Tehran and Washington to ensure the Gulf interests are accounted for in talks to end that stupid war. Yet, political division among these countries, including tension between Saudi Arabia and the UAE that escalated late last year, have stood in the way of such effort. Although all the Gulf states have been harmed by the war, they have been, all of them, harmed by the war. Gulf state experience the conflict very differently and now disagree about what to do next. I remember a philosopher or somebody in the 16th century, he was an Arab, that they said, that attributed that slogan, that saying to him, and said that the Gulf leaders have always agreed to disagree. And we're seeing that what now? He said that's in the 1600s. He said the Gulf leaders have always agreed to disagree. The UAE, for instance, has faced more incoming Iranian missiles and drones than Israel, and nearly as many as the rest of the Gulf combined. And the country is now deeply apprehensive about the prospects of diplomacy. Rather than going on the offensive against Iran themselves, or waiting for Washington to end the war, individual Gulf countries could pursue accommodation with Iran. That will be the way to go. But detente is not likely to be quick and easy. America still needs the Gulf, and the Gulf states still need Washington. Iranian missiles and drones have just ran down on Gulf City 2 days ago. In the wake of the war, Gulf countries could also diversify their partnership to lessen their economic and strategic reliance on Washington. Free political advice to the Gulf leaders. The problem is not no other power can offer them what the U.S. does. That's the problem. The problem is that no other power can offer them what the U.S. does. America and the Gulf still need each other. No other power, Russia, China, no other power can offer them at this point what the U.S. offers. Russia is preoccupied with Ukraine and is barely hanging on to its Middle Eastern foothold in Syria. Barely hanging on. China wields influence in turn because of the size of its economy and its role as the primary purchaser of Iran oil. The primary purchaser of oil. But he has shown no appetite to take on the responsibility of providing regional security. Gulf states, moreover, are likely to be wary of Russia's and China's continued political and military support for the Iranian regime, especially following reports that both countries have aided Iran's targeting of U.S. forces, including strikes on Gulf territory. No other power at this point can offer to the Gulf what the United States does. Middle powers such as Canada, India, and countries in Europe and East Asia can all provide valuable economic, technological, military, and political partnership and shared concern about U.S. reliability may make them more eager to cooperate with the Gulf. Nearly 24 countries have already expressed their willingness to help commercial traffic to the Strait of Hormuz. The geopolitical frontier, the geopolitical rapport are changing right here in front of our eyes. We are not in the unipole wall anymore in Malta. Not unipole. In Malta, Pole wall now, because the geopolitical rapport are changing. They are changing now. However, what comes next? The U.S. must demonstrate that it remains willing to lead, first and foremost, by reopening the Strait of Hormuz, the most pressing concern in the region's capitals, because that's their money. Next, the U.S. should enlist Gulf partners to help build the next generation of anti-missile and counter-drone defensive. The current war is giving the Gulf states the unenviable distinction, together with Ukraine, of being the U.S. partners most experienced in fighting off Iranian missile and drone. America and the Gulf states still need each other. However, in that need, the Gulf leaders must change their paradigm, not thinking that their security is a commodity to be brokered. There will be demand for new oil and gas pipeline to Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria, as well as rail and other transport infrastructure to connect the Gulf to markets in the Eastern Mediterranean and Europe. U.S. firms should be participating in these projects, and the U.S. government can use its unique diplomatic convening power to help see this thing through. The United States of America, willingness to ignore the advice of allies and eagerness to enter ill-conceived wars, has generated substantial discontent. But this is unlikely to be the conflict that decisively pushes the Gulf state to give up on Washington. Leon Trotsky once said that war is the locomotive of history. But for the moment, rather than driving ahead toward a post-American Middle East, the train is still stuck in the station. If the U.S. can navigate the difficult negotiation ahead and reach an acceptable resolution to the conflict, it will have a chance to salvage and strengthen its partnership with the Gulf state in the aftermath of this misbegotten war. Thank you for your time. This is the SALVANT report. Until next time.